Force podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Reviews of the Lost Ark. Reviews Without Remorse. I am Indiana Joe, professor of archaeology, expert on the occult, and how does one say it? Obtainer of rare antiquities. With me is my co-pilot, Dave, who never records a podcast without his trusty pet snake. This is episode 81, and in this episode, Dave Bautista, accidentally or otherwise, spoiled a plot point for Avengers 4. Is he trying to get himself fired? Let's discuss. Alec Baldwin, fresh off his excellent performance in Fallout, signs on to play Thomas Wayne in the new Joker movie.
Joe?
And finally, let's return to 1936 for the adventure of a lifetime. Dave and I will explore the masterful collaboration of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, Raiders of the Lost Ark. What's up, partner?
Did you have to give yourself like a 5-minute soliloquy of how wonderful you are and I'm just the guy who, has the snake?
It really was not intentional, honestly.
Yeah, sure it wasn't. Narcissist! Excuse me, sorry.
I'm gonna ask you this one time. Where is Gamora?
Yeah, I'll do you one better. Who's Gamora?
I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?
So, what's going on with our good buddy Dave Bautista? Apparently he let it slip, plot point, which quite frankly is not exactly a surprise. But yeah, and I heard different things about whether or not he was kind of sorry he did it. I'm really starting to wonder. I know he's not happy. I know he's kind of had it with Disney. Is he literally trying to get himself fired, you think? Or was it just a mistake?
That's actually a pretty good question. The way he stated it was that he actually, even before Avengers 3 had come out, he had said in interviews that they were filming Avengers 4. So it's kind of dicey, to be completely honest with you. I feel like this. I think the first time was a slip, and I think this time was the man just lost all of his F's. He has spread his arms wide and said, "Look upon the field of my F's. You will notice it is barren."
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree. He really is taking this James Gunn thing pretty personally, and I mean, we talked at length on several episodes now about the outpouring of support that he's gotten, but yeah, Dave Bautista is the one. Like he's really just not gonna let this thing drop. So
no.
I'm sympathetic, but dude, you got your own career to. That's a big company to piss off. Disney / Marvel. On sort of a side note, he's also been making a lot of noise about how he would like to get brought back for the next James Bond film. His character from Spectre, they kind of did like a Jaws kind of thing where, he just sort of got thrown out the window, but you don't know if he's dead or not. So he can easily come back and be a reoccurring character, which is totally fine with me because honestly, I think he was probably the best part of the movie, frankly. So yeah, I definitely get the idea that he is done with Disney, could care less, and now he's looking for, trying to line up other jobs, frankly.
Honestly, a part of me admires the guy, because here is a loyalty you don't see in Hollywood. This is, 9 times out of 10, a person gets cut off. To save your career, you just kind of shut your mouth and move on. So the fact that of all the cast, he is the most vocal, I think kind of speaks volumes as to what he thinks about James Gunn as a person, as a friend, perhaps.
You cannot flaw him for his integrity, boy. I remember thinking that Mark Hamill was, when he was so outspoken about Luke Skywalker's treatment in The Last Jedi, I thought, wow, that's a guy who's really could care less about what anybody thinks. He could care less if he ever works for that company again. Dave Bautista's taking it to a whole new level. So, yeah, like I said, there's a part of me that's getting nervous for him. Like, dude, please do not piss off. I feel like in 10 more years, there might not be a film franchise left that Disney doesn't own. So stop pissing them off, please.
Honestly, from what I understand, he made a lot of money during his wrestling career. He's made a lot of money, and supposedly he's invested it well. From what I hear, he doesn't need to work. He likes to work, but if he decided to retire from Hollywood, I've heard him say, "So what? Okay, that's it. Move on. I'm set for life. I don't have to worry about stuff." So
I'm sure
whatever.
he is. I'm sure he is. I mean, I don't doubt that at all. But interestingly, I mean, you and I have talked about who I think would probably, if they go ahead with Guardians of the Galaxy and they keep the Drax character, you know who I think should play him?
You know, you mentioned it, but you're going to have to remind me because I'm old.
I think Vin Diesel should fit that role because, quite frankly, they kind of have a similar look, a similar build. Vin Diesel will probably have to beef up maybe just a little bit more. The idea that he's already playing Groot, I kind of feel like he could just play the two characters, and it's not like he's crossing any picket lines exactly, because I kind of feel like the problem with the situation now is anybody who, A, directs the next film, which I hope is Taika Waititi, by the way, and whoever takes over the character of Drax, it's almost like you're guaranteed a little backlash. So I kind of feel like, you know what, if you sort of keep it within the family, you know, Vin Diesel taking the Drax role and Taika Waititi coming over from Thor Ragnarok, that's probably the best case scenario at that point.
We'll see. It's so early, and since they've canceled production on it until they can sort stuff out, who knows?
That's a good point.
I mean, it's also very possible we never get a Guardians 3. Maybe that's just it. But, you know, I do want to say one thing. I feel like this is something worth talking about now that Bautista's brought it up twice. The deaths in Avengers 3, which, by the way, people, if you have not seen Avengers Infinity War at this point, I can't help you. Basically, everybody died. Well, not everybody. Half the cast died. Literally half the cast died. They literally divided the cast in half. It's kind of awesome in a small respect. And they did it in a way that was meant to come across as emotional and sad and everything like that. And I thought that it was done in a very effective way. But can we be honest with ourselves for a second? Do we really think any of these characters are dead?
That's a great question. I kind of feel like we touched on that before. But am I getting a feeling that is the polish starting to come off with that realization for you?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of like, you know, in the moment at the time it was, and I'll give the filmmakers credit for it, that in the moment at the time it worked, but the more time that has passed, the more hollow it feels. It's like, you know, no, you're not telling me that the $1 billion launched franchise of Black Panther is over. Or they're gonna move on to the sister being the new Black Panther. Much as I would like to see that, because in the comics the sister's freaking awesome as the Black Panther, and yeah, because she is. But that's a whole other story. That would be cool and everything like that. It's too soon for that. You're not gonna do that immediately. You're not gonna lose Cumberbatch as freaking Doctor Strange, especially after they've announced, yes, we're gonna do Doctor Strange 2. It's like, well, I mean, spoilers.
Well, and I think they're already filming the next Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's filming right now.
It is literally filming, so...
Yeah. So, surprise, Spidey's still alive!
Yeah, listen, and that's an extremely valid point, and honestly, I that's kind of where I was. I mean, when I was stuttering, you know, during our review, and I said, you know, it's a spectacular achievement. You know, I heard one reviewer call this more of an event than an actual film, which I wholeheartedly sort of agree with. Yeah, and frankly, I was sort of begging. I was, like, in my mind, I was begging, please, just call it Avengers Infinity War Part 1. Like you said, we know they're not all going to just stay dead. At no point did we ever really think that. So, yeah, at the end of the day, well, what do you have here? It's still a ballsy, as you said very clearly, it was a ballsy move, and it was a gut punch. But, yeah, I mean, they are coming back. We know it. You know it, I know it, everyone listening knows it. So...
It's one of those things that, a credit to the filmmakers, a credit to the movie and everything like that, at the time that it's occurring, it's very gut punchy. And any gut punch, no matter if it's hard or soft, is going to hurt at the time. And it's only going to be in retrospect when you realize, oh, shoot, I got faked out. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I have accepted the fact that I have gotten faked out. So in a weird way, that like people making a big deal over this feels more like, oh, the guy who's protected James Gunn. This feels a little clickbaity because I don't think anybody in their right mind truly thinks that all these characters are dead.
Yes, but still, for Dave Bautista to come out and say that he's coming back, I mean, put it this way. They have not announced any movies beyond Avengers 4 because they are trying to at least keep some surprises close to the vest.
Surprise.
And we know, or well, at least we think that some might not be coming back. So, yeah, but for the most part, we know that the ones who died in the snap are probably all coming back. Again, like I said, it's still valid to say, hey, Dave Bautista, don't be giving out the secrets, even though it's not that closely guarded a secret. You're right. I mean, it's a little shallow to protest and say, hey, you spoiled the surprise. Well, not really. Hey, listen, it's still a spectacular movie. It is a movie event to end all movie events. So
Indeed.
Again, I'm not. Again, that was the struggle I had reviewing it. Was that, well, you sort of know this is not the end. So how but still they kind of made it a self-contained film without making it a self-contained film. If that makes any sense.
It does.
So yeah, I mean, again, that was sort of my struggle with it when I reviewed it. How if they had just called it part 1, it would have been my out, my way of escaping, having to criticize it for the way they leave it.
At the end of the day, it's just a movie, and this guy's trying to defend his friend who got fired from a movie.
There you go.
Life goes on.
I was sent from planet Gyron to conquer the Earth. I had a terrific plan, I thought it would work. Tried to get the Earthlings all to kill each other, you see. But it all went wrong and now I must decree. You are worthless, Alec Baldwin, you are worthless, Alec Baldwin. You failed in every way and now my stock in you has fallen. Your career is stalling and you're worthless, Alec Baldwin. That's why I blew your head off and your children are all boring.
So, the Joker, which I was kind of lukewarm about, but Alec Baldwin has signed on to play Thomas Wayne.
Joe?
Which, quite frankly, is a pretty spectacular bit of casting.
Joe?
I think this is going to be pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to Mr. Baldwin's portrayal.
He dropped out. He dropped out, dude. He like literally a day later, he said, no, I'm no longer doing it. I can't make the commitment at this time.
Wow, what's that all about?
Well, if you want to ask me, I think it has to do with the fact that this is a shitty idea. And he actually said, I feel like this is a case where they kind of went to him and said, we want you to play Thomas Wayne. And like, there was that part of him was like, oh my God, Thomas Wayne. Yeah, I'm interested. Sign me up for that. And so on and so forth. And like, literally they announced, Alec Baldwin's going to do it. And he's like, okay, give me the script. And he took the script and he's like, no, I'm not doing this piece of shit.
Now that our ruse has been, yeah, I think it's a terrible idea too, and I'm not surprised. I mean, why? This is one of those where, again, I see this as being another Venom, nothing more, nothing less.
Who is the genius that has decided this is the way to go? Let's do movies that just show the villains of the heroes. Who came up with that idea? And why is it attracting these actors?
I will say this, we haven't exactly talked about it yet because it really hasn't been exactly newsworthy, but this kind of course change that DC has done, instead of going from a DC cinematic universe, they're now kind of going to the worlds of DC or something or other. Yeah, I hear you, but here's my fleeting optimistic view on that. I think at least they finally got the idea that they suck at doing cinematic universes, or they just suck at doing movies, period. So maybe somebody kind of took a look at maybe what the DC animated films are doing and said, they've kind of instead of, I mean, seriously, they're talking about doing the Joker, right? And they're talking about having Thomas Wayne in it. That already tells me, geez, am I going to see the same origin again? The origin of Batman again? But here's my hope. When you watch the animated movies, they go off in wildly different directions. You got Gotham by Gaslight. You've got Batman Ninja. I mean, you've got the All-Star Justice League stuff. I mean, you've got some very interesting stuff and some very interesting directions that they are taking. Maybe they are trying to do that. Maybe they are trying to go in multiple different angles and say, let's try something a little different, a little out of the norm. That's my hope. Whether or not it's going to pan out is a completely different story. I don't have any really good feelings as of yet, because I have no reason to. There's nothing they've done so far to make me feel pretty good about anything they're trying. It feels like they're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Maybe something will stick.
That's you know what? No, that's not the way you do it. If you can't figure out how to do a cinematic universe, then for God's sakes, just focus on one movie. And hey, let's make it a movie that people actually want to see. Who the hell wants to see a movie just about the Joker, but not Batman? Who? What is the point of that?
I don't know. I literally don't know. And
I mean, I appreciate the high road you're taking, dude. I appreciate the devil's advocate that you're playing and everything like that. And you're probably right. They're probably just trying to do this. But still, where is the sense? Where is the person saying, where's the person that's saying, guys, do you really think it's a good idea to invest all this money? What data, what secret data do they have? This made me laugh. The other day, there was a news report saying that Venom movie was tracking very highly with women.
Really?
Yes.
That surprises me, if that's the case.
There's my thing. What are the three greatest lies? Lies, damned lies, and statistics. Somebody's got some statistics, has a calculator shoved up their butt that's telling them that statistically speaking, this is the way to do. Hollywood math has always been messed up to begin with, and now, and just in the accounting division. But then Hollywood math, when it comes to making movies, I kind of feel like that, in a weird way, that like the Venom movie, in a way, inspired this Joker movie, and it's like nobody even thought to think, but guys, I don't think this Venom movie is going to work.
Right. I mean, when you said before about the villains without I said it already. I think this Joker movie is going to be very similar to this dumpster fire, which is going to be the Venom movie. It's a stupid idea. You can't do a movie about a villain without a hero. I mean, these are not anti-heroes. These are villains. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, I can't even think of anything to really compare it to, frankly. Like, well, who does movies about bad guys without a good guy? It doesn't make any sense. The whole point of the Joker is that he is chaos and Batman is order.
Yeah, and one created the other, and vice versa.
And just like Venom. Venom is a dark, shadowy version of Spider-Man. So what do you have left when you take the heroes out? It doesn't make any sense. So I do not understand the logic of any of it. I think it's all going to crash and burn really hard, and it's going to seriously. I feel like next year we'll sit around talking about how they goofed these movies up. And like the lessons to be learned from not to make these kind of movies.
I'm going to be using the Nelson Muntz sound effect a lot, aren't I?
For nearly 3,000 years, man has searched for the lost Ark of the Covenant.
The Bible speaks of the Ark leveling mountains and laying waste to entire regions. Not something to be taken lightly. No one knows its secrets.
Jones, do you realize what the Ark is? It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God.
An army which carries the Ark before it is invincible.
In 1936, archaeologist and adventurer Indiana Jones is hired by the U.S. government to find the Ark of the Covenant before Adolf Hitler's Nazis can obtain its awesome powers. Written by Lawrence Kasdan, based on a story by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman, directed by Steven Spielberg, 1981's truest classic in all the senses, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The really nice thing about doing this show, the fun part of doing the show, aside from the actual, discussions that we have, is taking an opportunity to sit down and watch movies that we've seen already, sitting down and watching them from beginning to end. there are too many opportunities where something is on television as you're flipping through, or and you just sort of let it play in the background while you're doing other things. It's not often that you take something off the shelf and say, I haven't seen this one in a while, and sit down and watch it. And naturally, this is what I did this weekend. Sat down and got to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark from beginning to end. And not that I ever really forgot, but it absolutely positively reminds you of what a masterpiece this film is. And again, there's been so many sequels and so many offshoots that it's one of those things that it was so incredible at the time that now it redefined filmmaking. It created an entire genre that now you take for granted. But when you sit down and watch it, you say to yourself, again, some people could dismiss it and saying, well, he hit the right chord at the right time, and that's what. No. This is a masterpiece in filmmaking. Nothing more, nothing less. I don't think there ever was before this, and I don't think there will ever be again a film like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
There's no possible way a movie like this could ever get made again. This is one of those. The only thing where I hear people say it was the right place, right time. That's a bit of a misnomer. This is a topic that Lucas wanted to do for a while, and the only reason it got done was because Spielberg had extreme clout and was able to say, yes, I want to do this. And that was really what it was. Nobody believed in this project.
Yeah, even after this was after Star Wars. I mean, this was George Lucas peddling around his next project after Star Wars. You'd think people would be all over it, but they were not.
Yep, no, this was definitely not one that people were. Paramount Pictures was like, whatever. We'll throw you $2 million. You guys do whatever the hell you want. Originally, it was going to be written and directed by Philip Kaufman. Philip Kaufman left the project, but because he put so much work into it, he still got a story by credit. And to be honest with you, since Philip Kaufman has not touched any of the movies since, and the varying degrees that they've gone, kind of wonder if maybe he's the secret ingredient to Indiana Jones.
That's a good point there.
But that aside, you have a movie where you have a compelling character, compelling villains, a compelling female character who is not a damsel in distress by any stretch of the imagination, and yet still is a damsel in distress. An action adventure with completely practical effects in majority of the situations. Even the Wrath of God scene at the end is mostly practical effects, the way that the heads were melted and everything like that.
Yeah.
You have tremendous acting across the board. You have one of... I'm going to say it right here, right now. Lawrence Kasdan has written a lot of screenplays in his day. I feel like this is his opus. He has not written before or after a better screenplay than this movie. Every beat leads into the next. There is one of your favorite things that you say is not a second of the film is wasted.
Right.
And in this movie especially is such an example of that.
Not a second of fluff. If somebody said you need to trim 5 minutes out of this film, I would have no clue where to begin. You're absolutely right. Every frame of this film is absolutely spectacular. Again, you mentioned Kaufman, you mentioned Kasdan, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg. I really do believe this was the pinnacle of everyone's career. George Lucas, here's a guy who, again, he makes Star Wars. He's doing Empire Strikes Back. Now, I know he's also got a lot of other creatives involved with Empire that helped to elevate it. Kasdan being one, by the way. Spielberg, he is at the height of his career, I think. He went on to do E.T. after this. As far as I'm concerned, this is the height of his career. Everyone involved. I mean, and again, the screenplay, that Lawrence Kasdan screenplay, like you said, you had The Empire Strikes Back, which I think everyone will agree is the height of Star Wars. And then he goes on to do this. I think everyone here is at the top of their game, including the people on screen, and it shows.
100%. Easily. Easily. There is no fluff. There is no wasted moment. There is no actor that doesn't have their opportunity to shine in some way, shape, or form. This is perfection. I mean, I hate to like kind of be spoiling my scoring, but I had a harder time sitting there. I mean, one of the things we do is we always go back and we say, okay, we're going to look at this with a critical eye, and we're going to see what we can find. And it's the unenviable task of you wind up going through a movie that you love, and you're like staring intently. You're looking. You're not looking at it as I just want to sit back and relax and watch this movie. Now you're in critical form. Now your critical eye is out, and you're looking for anything, any weakness, and it's impossible to find. A bad special effect here or there, which was a limitation of 30 years ago of trying to do special effects. That is about the highest I can come up with as a complaint, and frankly, I still can't even complain about that.
Even that is a struggle. Right, you're absolutely right. There are moments. I mean, one of the brilliant things about this film is that it's not. There was a lot of adversity in the making of this film, and part of that shows. But again, all of that I think is more of a tribute than a detraction from the final product. Yeah, I mean, even the special effects absolutely stand up today. Now, I might be looking at it through a nostalgic lens. I can't find. I mean, even the final scene, frankly, is spot on. You know, I mean, again, today is so easy to crank out. I mean, to try to do laser effects and smoke and yet, I mean, now a fourth grader can do that with After Effects. Yeah. But frankly, it still stands up. And like you said, the fact that they did it practical gives it lends such a sense of credibility. Like, I'm really watching something on screen that is actually happening, as opposed to watching things today where you just know it's CGI. I mean, again, the fact that it looked difficult to do lends to the overall credibility. And I mean, this is a film that has an incredible amount of energy. It's got a sense of energy that it's so incredibly infectious. And had they taken any shortcuts, had Lucas gone back and Lucased up this project, for example, let's say he went back and swapped out and put in CGI effects over, you'd be heartbroken. Like, thank God they never got around to doing it. And they were good, by the way. This was something that they did talk about. I remember that.
It was Spielberg that talked him out of it and agreed to only one. There's only one difference between the movie we saw in the theater and the Blu-ray today. One difference. You know what it is? No. Okay. The scene where Marion falls in the Well of Souls and is faced with the Cobra.
Oh,
in the original version, you could see the reflection of the glass that was cutting off between the two of them. They just digitally removed that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, they didn't replace the Nazi machine guns with walkie-talkies. And incidentally, by the way, I believe they were talking about this right around the time when South Park goofed on the whole idea. Mm-hmm. For all we know, and apparently from what I heard, Spielberg actually did reach out to Matt Stone and Trey Parker after he saw that and basically said it was a great episode or whatever. For all we know, we owe it to Trey Parker and Matt Stone that we didn't get a goofed up, fixed up, remastered version of Raiders.
Was that the same one where him and Spielberg raped Indiana Jones?
They're raping him! I can't watch. Let's get out of here, Kyle. Why would Spielberg and Lucas do this? Come on, let's go. Why are they doing this? Just run!
Yeah. That. Oh wait.
Wow.
No, that's.
I think that was two separate ones.
You're absolutely right. It's two separate episodes. The one, the one.
Because I don't think Spielberg would call saying what a wonderful episode where he's holding Indiana Jones down.
That one was the one they did just to rip the hell out of Crystal Skull, which was the most perfect commentary on that movie that I can find. No, you're right. The one where they were going to remaster Raiders was a different one.
But yes, that was the only change that has been made. And believe me, I remember that movie. I must have seen that movie like 3 times in the theater back in 81. 81, ladies and gentlemen. 81. Yeah. Let's do some math. 91, 2001, 2011. 37 years old.
The Ark. If it is there, Atanis, then it is something that man was not meant to disturb.
It is protected by forces beyond imagination. It is desired above all treasures on earth by those who are good. Trust me. And those who are evil.
tell you everything.
Yes, sir. I know you will.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Listen, this film is still, to this day, on many lists of just the greatest films of all time. I mean, it is widely acknowledged as being an absolute masterpiece. I'm going to shout out to my good buddy Scott. My friend Scott has gone on record many times saying that he would put Raiders up against, like, Casablanca as one of the greatest films of all time. And he's spot on. I absolutely positively agree with that. I would put this up against Casablanca as one of the greatest movies of all time. You can't call this like a more childish kind of a film. I mean, like, it's not it's more of an adventure film than a drama. However, it is still an impeccable work of art. All of the storytelling tools are present here.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts as I was rewatching the movie, and that's something I hadn't realized, I guess, the first time I saw it, is there are a lot of moments that just play out with no dialogue. Everything is just on the screen for you to understand. The whole scene where he is in, oh my God, why can't I think the name of the place? Where he's in the map room, when the whole scene where he is in the map room is just silent. From the minute he climbs down till he calls up for Salah at the end, the entire scene is silent. It's like a 3 or 4 minute scene, and it's masterful directing, masterful acting, because at every moment you know exactly what he's doing and why. You know, I love one of my favorite things is at one point he references his book, and you see his finger going down the map. Yeah. And you see he finds one hole, and he kind of puts his finger in there, and then he moves it further, and then dusts off and finds the hole that he's... And you realize that's where the Nazis put it. Yeah. That's where... I mean, just that type of brilliance. Sure. That subtle, beautiful. Yeah. This is filmmaking that I love. I don't have a problem. I feel like exposition, if used in a certain way, a dialogue-based exposition in a certain way, can work. If it's overused, it can be a bit of a drag. Even in the best but this movie, like, the whole beginning is pretty much silent. You have no idea what he's doing, why he's there, and everything like that, but it explains it as it goes along. You know, you don't know what that idol is. We still don't know what that idol is. Does it matter? This is what Hitchcock meant by the MacGuffin. You know, it doesn't really have to... If the audience is more focused on the origin of what the MacGuffin is, you've lost the audience.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, and even like the arc itself. I mean, they brilliantly tell you in the beginning what it is, why it mattars, and that's it. From there on out, they're done. You understand the importance of it. You don't need to keep explaining it. One of my favorite scenes, maybe not one of my favorite scenes, but one, like a typical scene, the part where they go to visit the old man who is interpreting the medallion, the headpiece for the Staff of Ra. That scene is a perfect example of how masterfully they do every scene. Like, every scene, even if it's a very minor one like that. Like people, like, if you say, what's your favorite scene, nobody's going to say that one. But it starts out with the guy slipping in, putting poison in the dates, and slipping back out. That's it. That scene from then on out has a tension, a palpable tension, that you can't exactly explain or put your finger on, but it's there the entire time, and it's basically like a little movie unto itself, where it starts out with a problem, right? Mm-hmm. The resolution, of course, comes at the end, right before the scene closes. He's right about to swallow it. Salah grabs it.
Bad dates,
and that's how it ends. I mean, and so it's a small self-contained scene within itself that has like sort of like a beginning, a build-up, and a finale. So again, like there were. That's what I mean. There's nothing in this film that is taken for granted. There's nothing in here that is not done masterfully. Even if it's just like some sort of exposition, but it's usually visual exposition.
They managed to blend the perfect way to do both, to tell the story both visually and auditorially. I don't even know if that's a word, and I apologize for anybody who knows the English language. But like, that scene is a great example. I mean, he's explaining what Indy is going to do, so that scene basically builds to the map room scene that I was just describing. Yeah. If it wasn't for that scene, everything else wouldn't have made sense later on in the movie. And yet, they still have a little bit of the ticking time bomb going throughout the entire scene with the dates. Yeah. And they did it in a way that it didn't feel... Like, when you have a scene like that nowadays, it feels so ham-fisted the way, oh, not just yet. Oh, not quite just yet. Oh, you know, like that, you know?
Yeah.
I felt like everything that they did here was so natural. And the way that Harrison Ford, which I'm going to just come right out and say it, I don't think Harrison Ford has done better since this movie.
Oh, I agree. He is absolutely at the top of his game. Again, like everybody else, he's spectacular in this. And one of the other scenes that I think is tremendous is that, I mean, again, I think they're all tremendous. I mean,
there isn't a bad scene in this movie,
none.
Joe.
Seriously, I could stop prefacing by saying, yeah, the scene where he meets Marion in the bar.
Hello, Marion.
Indiana Jones. Always knew someday you'd come walking back through my door. I never doubted that. Something made it inevitable. So what are you doing here in Nepal?
I need one of the pieces your father collected.
I learned to hate you in the last 10 years.
Oh, I love that scene.
Which turns into the bad guys showing up, and which escalates into the fight, the shootout, the gunfight, and the fist fights. So good. And again, I mean, there's so many things in this that are just so tremendous. First of all, when he walks in, he meets her, they argue, he walks out, and of course he looks back. I mean, of course, everything from the lighting is absolutely tremendous. The visuals are tremendous. Every frame is. By the way, the editing of this movie is so good. The editing is perfect. Your eye is always where it should be, seeing what it needs to see. The pacing is perfect, but I digress. When he leaves the bar, when she thinks she's alone, she takes the medallion out and she's wearing it around her neck. And as she's looking, there's like a little beat where the wind kicks in and blows the candle. Now, This was easily like something you would completely dismiss as if like maybe there would have been like a Rolling Thunder sound effect at that moment, something just to build, like dun dun whatever. The candle flickers, right? What's happening there is Indiana Jones just slipped back into the room because he knows something is up. And later, I love the part when the bad guy shows up and the guy taught the creepy guy, he gets the poker out of the thing. Right as he's taking the poker out of the fire, the shot all of a sudden is overhead and looking down, like in between, like somebody's looking between. That's Indiana Jones hiding. At least that's how I interpret it.
No, that's how I interpret it too.
That's
I didn't
him
think of it
hiding and waiting to come out.
When I was younger.
So again, all of these things are there's a purpose for every single thing that happens. Even the shot when the bad guys come in and it's like dun 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 and the doors open. It's like this kind of classic, dun dun. And I love the part when they walk in, or when they're starting to walk in, and you see the shadow on the wall. Now, meanwhile, Indiana Jones came in before. He cast the big cool looking shadow, which was cool because again, you want to give this character an air of mystery. That's a perfect way to do that, especially even though we've already been introduced to him prior. The introduction at the very beginning, of course, is phenomenal. So now he casts the shadow. The bad guys come, dun dun, and then they cast the shadow, and the shadows kind of, if you watch, they sort of come down, right? The shadows sort of move down the wall as they're walking in onto her, as if they're bearing down on her. This is impending danger now. I mean, like, everything about this thing is masterful. The shadows in so many scenes. There are so many scenes where you're watching, when they take the arc out, and I promise I'll take a breath and give you a chance. When they take the arc out and they're starting to walk away, most of that is against the wall. If you notice, they don't give you too much. They don't really show the actual Ark of the Covenant too much, which I think is intentional. And the fact that most of that scene when they're carrying it away is, if you watch, is just the shadow moving along the wall the entire time. So, I mean, just literally everything about this film is so thought out. It is the height of craftsmanship.
The cinematography was by a man named Douglas Slocum. He actually did all three Indiana Jones movies before he died.
Nice.
All right, so that's one of the reasons probably why there was because visually, cinematography-wise, each of the movies of the first three movies did have a parody going for them. Quality-wise, we can get into when we get to them, but that scene is probably one of my favorite scenes, and it's definitely the scene that sold me to the movie. Not only just the little thing, the way that Marion and Indy interacted with each other, how literally there was like just 3 lines of dialogue Just 3 lines of dialogue told you everything you needed to know about about their history. You didn't have to go get too in depth with it. Just, I was young and you knew what you were doing. It's like, okay, we see where this was going.
And they purposely leave it pretty ambiguous. You don't get specific details. You get the big picture that you need.
Yeah. And for a younger audience, that would go right over their damn head. So that is even perfect for I call that the Bugs Bunny method of comedy, where they'll hit Elmer Fudd in the head and then they'll make the little side comment about Betty Grable or something like that. So yeah, the adult and the kid, very brilliantly done. The lighting, the effects, the fight. Oh God, the fight. Even the little things like Marion's going to help him, but oh look, there's some whiskey coming out. I'll just take a quick sip. Boom,
right, exactly. Seriously, little moments, little beats that happen throughout. And by the way, I love this film was so incredible. I've heard it compared to the James Bond films of that era. And I remember there was one reviewer I was listening to, and they said, when you were watching a Bond movie in the 80s, you were very used to the sound effects. It's like you knew exactly every sound effect, every punch effect, the gunshot effect. Raiders, from the very distinct punch sounds to the very distinct gunshot sounds, everything was so distinctive. Like they really put thought and care into every single detail of this film. I mean, there's so many things that were involved in the making of this film that I think most films today take completely for granted.
I agree. There's first of all, there's a commitment across every single department there, from the director, the writer, the acting. All those people are in complete sync. The production, moving to the different areas. For God's sakes, poor Harrison Ford making. You know who I feel bad for? I feel bad for the swordsman in black. This poor guy, he thought this was my big break. I'm going to be in a movie, and instead he just twirls his damn sword around and gets shot because Harrison Ford wasn't feeling well that day. And became one of the best scenes in the movie.
Well, I tell you what, you have to wonder, was he more memorable? Was that scene more memorable the way they did it, or if they actually did go through with the big sword fight, or the big fight with him with the sword? Again, as great as it would have been to see that, it's spectacular what they did. And again, there were no wrong moves. And also, by the way, that brings us to the humor in this film, because again, all of the humor is very sparing in this film, but every single one hits the right tone. Again, there were so many times when I get so frustrated with the ha-has in a lot of films, not so much, again, not because there's a joke there, not because there's a beat that you're supposed to chuckle, but it breaks the tone of the film. Here, everything they do is right in line with the film. The two big laughs that I always remember is that one, when he shoots the sword guy, which again, spot on, and then the one later when they're traveling in the ship and she's trying the dress on,
and Marion turns the mirror,
smacks him upside down, uppercuts his jaw. Again, that is hysterical. That is great, and it's totally in line with the film.
No tonal shift at any point in the entire movie. Everything stays the same. Everything that you need to get to the ending of that movie has been on the screen since the first moment that the Paramount Mountains faded into Colombia, Venezuela, or whatever that was supposed to be. I don't remember what it was supposed to be. No character felt shortchanged. No character acted in a way that didn't feel proper or didn't feel done for overly comedic purposes. The Sala in this movie is so much more than the Sala we eventually get. The Brody in this movie, I miss this Brody more than I can imagine.
Yeah.
Such dignity and respect.
Absolutely,
and
yes.
I'm sorry. This is going to be extremely boring for the audience to just listen to us gush.
Yeah.
But there is, even after all these years, even as jaded as I have become, there is an awe and there's an inspiration in this movie. There is nothing in this movie that doesn't work. Nothing.
Yeah.
Do you know how rare that is for nothing to not work?
Yeah.
Or something.
You're absolutely right. The stars, the planets, absolutely positively align in this film. The other thing that I think is very worth mentioning, again, the villains. The villains in this are awesome. I love when it's when you look at the Belloc character, the Dietrich character, and the Tot character, when it kind of becomes the three of them as being like the trio of villains, sort of, they work so well because they each have such distinct personalities. They all bring something to the table. So when they're talking together, working together, the dialogue between them is so great. Because again, they're different types of people. Each one is fleshed out. You get the idea behind each one. And I mean, and it's like they represent this perfect triangle. Each one sort of represents some wickedness, I guess. But I mean, it just all of them work so well because they're so thought out, fleshed out.
Exactly. I got to be honest with you. I kind of feel like I don't have anything to add. You've been This is definitely, ladies and gentlemen, this is definitely Joe's Reviews Without Remorse today. I'm just the I'm just the Ed McMahon here for those people who are old enough to know who Ed McMahon was.
Well, just so you know, yeah. I mean, you're talking to a guy who bought himself an Indiana Jones fedora and wore it in high school.
Where are they? I think they're talking about us. No way.
Okay. You want to talk about the biggest nerd you've ever seen? Picture me walking around high school with this hat on and trying to play it off like it was like this is just what I wear every day, not because it's Indiana Jones. I mean, and it was literally one of those authentic like Indiana Jones brown fedoras. So yeah, I was a huge Indiana Jones nerd when this came out. Like this was, I was in high school. It was pretty much right when Temple of Doom came out that I was in high school, so I was sort of at the peak of my Indiana Jones nerddom. So yeah, so if I'm over gushing and overbearing in this one, I apologize, but I mean you are talking to a serious Indiana Jones fan.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm a Cap fan, and I'll still criticize Cap when he messes up, and you'll still criticize Indy, when he messes up, and vice versa. We will call each other when we're wrong. You're not wrong. This movie is perfection. There is no, and will never be a movie of this type ever, as far as I'm concerned. There will never, ever be one like this. This is the pinnacle. Once you hit that pinnacle, everything is just a cheap imitation. It's like Die Hard all over again. Remember how we talked about Die Hard was just that perfect R-rated action movie for its time frame, and there'll never be another one like it? Everybody wants to be like that, but there isn't. Everybody wants to be Indiana Jones. Excuse me. Everybody wants to be Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
But nobody will ever. It'll never happen again.
Not even Indiana Jones himself will ever recapture the magic that was the lightning in the bottle that this movie was.
Indiana Jones. Always knew someday you'd come walking back through my door.
Experience the ultimate adventure like never before.
Well, Joe, I kind of feel like it's perfunctory at this point, but we are at that point in the show where we need to give this movie. Now, I know we were harsh on it, and I know that there was a lot of bad things said, but we're going to have to put on our professional hats now, and on the count of 3, we're both going to say our score at the same time. Are you ready?
Yes, sir. 10. Is anybody's? I mean, seriously, I was even going to be funny and say like 11 or something, but I mean, it's we both know. We're both giving this a 10. We both know, and honestly, I think everybody knows. I don't think anybody listening to this is going to go 10. I mean, everyone knows this is a honest to God, flawless film. I mean, it is so good that I would even attribute I said before that there was adversity in making this. Like, this was not. They didn't have a bundle of money. They didn't have a lot of easy special effects. This took some. It took work. It took blood, sweat, and tears to make this. Had they made it a couple years later and had a couple more dollars, I don't even think it would have been as good. I say to myself, I think everything was exactly right. The fact that they were limited in certain ways and they had to come up with creative ways to do things, and they could not rely on CGI or tons of special effects, that you had to do most things practically. Again, everything just aligned perfectly. All of the dialogue is spectacular. The acting is spectacular. I mean, everything about this movie is just spot on. Like I said in the beginning, there's never been a film like this before, and I don't think there will ever be a film quite like it again.
When you have a movie where characterization is as compelling as the action scenes, and the action scenes are no frickin' slouch either. That is an amazing combination to happen. It very rarely, some with action movies nowadays, you have to take for granted that's the good guy, that's the bad guy, fighty, punch, kick. I felt every single bit of action beat in this movie because the characters were that compelling. Every punch that Indy took, I would wince. Like the scene with the big truck scene at the end, the spectacular truck chase scene, where he gets shot in the arm, and they don't even make a big deal of it. They just, it happens, the blood splatter, and he holds on to it, and the last German guy comes and he starts pounding on it. That always makes me wince, to the point that when Indy gets back on the truck and starts slamming the guy into the dashboard, you're cheering. You are cheering like nobody's business.
Yes, absolutely. Again, everything they do here, the tension builds so incredibly. And, I mean, another random thing about that truck chase, I love the idea that when they first start out, the truck is in perfect shape. It's clean. Everything is great. First couple of crashes, they crash into a water thing. There's a splash of water on the windshield. When he gets shot, the blood splatters across the windshield. They smash it at one. It's like by the end of the scene, the truck now looks as battered and bruised as he does. That is another visual storytelling device. It is a way to illustrate how he's getting banged up because you're watching the truck get banged up too. I mean, again, everything about this is masterful.
There is nothing to complain about this movie. There is no day of the week where you say to yourself, I don't know if I'm in the mood to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yes, you are. I guarantee it will brighten your day.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what's going on in your life. You could have like every single country song cliche happening in your life right now. You put on this movie, you're gonna feel better.
And incidentally, by the way, again, just another thing to gush about: the arc that Indiana Jones goes through is amazing. And quite frankly, this is something I want to highlight now because it's something that goes away in the future, and I think it's a detriment. But you watch him again now. The whole beginning of the movie, he says, what are you trying to scare me? This is all magical hocus pocus. By the end, he's telling her, shut your eyes, Marion, shut your eyes, don't look at it, because he's a believer. It is also a journey, his own personal journey, from somebody who just doesn't believe any of this stuff to being, and again, something in later films that we sort of just take it for granted at this point that crazy stuff happens. We're in a world where you never know what can happen, and magic and craziness. But here, it is a full-blown arc. It is a full-blown journey from one end to the other. Belloc says it's a radio for speaking to God, and he basically mocks him, the idea. So again, that's his personal journey. So oh man, I mean, you're absolutely right. This is going to be a really boring episode, and I mean, I apologize, I guess, because it's so much easier to sort of pick apart what's wrong. But I mean, again, this one does everything correctly.
You know what? This is the appetizer. We still have salad, we still have dinner, and we still have dessert to go through. And trust me, it's not going to be as easy from this point forward. So we need to get through the appetizers. And this is this is the type of appetizer that if you said to yourself, you know what, I could just go home right now and be completely satisfied, I would absolutely be. But no, we still have the salad, we still have the entree, and then we still have dessert.
Yep.
And supposedly there's going to be an after-dinner drink coming soon, but we'll get to that another time.
This is true.
Obviously, since we both gave 10s, we don't have a Who Asked You.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where it gets interesting because it's very difficult to just kind of point out one thing for your consideration. For me, I had a bunch of things. I had the fact that they blended reality and the quote-unquote supernatural in a wonderful way. I feel like, you're watching this movie in the beginning and it's like, this is grounded in reality. The type of thing that you hear like the Zack Snyders of the world and the Christopher Nolans saying about what they're doing with their comic book characters. But here it actually was the case. And the way the movie progressed to the point, like you said, like Indy's arc, the movie is also its own arc to get the audience on board with this big ending that's coming up. You have to believe that there's more going on than what is simply reality, and you have to believe it's an actual functional thing that can happen in this world. Right. So that when those beasts So that when those demons and angels and stuff start flying out of the ark, that you're on board for that.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do in any stretch of the imagination. But it works here. It worked perfectly here. So that's one of the things I've got for you consideration.
That is, we use the word earned a lot when we talk about movies.
Yes.
You're spot on with that. They earned it through the screenplay, through the development. Brody is first very trepidatious and kind of gives a warning. Sala, same thing. Sala is very trepidatious about the whole idea of it because, and of course, Indy's not buying it. But by the end, you're absolutely right. When it actually happens, it's completely earned at that point.
100%. That's just one. Harrison Ford is another.
Yes.
Steven Spielberg, at the height of his directing powers, is absolutely another. Kasdan's screenplay, 100%. The incredible cinematography by Douglas Slocum. The astounding visual effects by ILM and the stunt work by the stunt team, Vic Armstrong and all of them. All of those things are absolutely positively worthy for your consideration. So when I chose this, I want you to understand just how huge I think the actual for your consideration is. John Williams.
Oh, very good one. And we didn't even mention the score yet. That's
good. We did not.
Yeah, good one. Very good. You're absolutely right. I completely agree with you. The score is another example where the people involved are at the peak of their career, the height of their game, and you're absolutely right. This score is tremendous.
4 notes on a horn, and everybody will know what the song is.
Yep.
That's it. That's all you have to hear, and you know exactly what it is. That's even better than Star Wars.
I completely agree with you. He really is. I mean, seriously, you think about that stage of John Williams' career, every movie he was involved with was iconic. It's not just background music. It was a magnificent, a masterpiece of a score.
The score just in the opening shots, the score inside the map room, the score in the truck chase is still one of my favorite bits of music. The way that the tempo goes up and up and up as the entire thing progresses, just to like really heighten the tension. Brilliant work. Just
totally agree.
I could listen to it 24/7, and I have.
It's amazing how, on one hand, it is a very quintessential John Williams score, the same way Star Wars or Superman might be. Yet this is also, just by some little tweak that I wish I could communicate music better, some tweak puts this. I see this as an adventure film, like a Saturday morning serial adventure film from the old days. You know what I'm saying? That captures like a moment in time, and I don't know how he does it, but he did it.
He's just the man, and he's retiring. Supposedly after the next Star Wars movie, he's retiring.
You know what? That's probably a good enough note to, on paper anyway, a great time to end his career, his illustrious career. I'm with you 100% on that one.
Is that for your consideration as well?
No, and I, just like you, I struggled with a lot. I mean, there was a million things I was kicking around. So many, again, like I said, everyone peaks. Everyone is peaking in this film. Everything is working. Everything is spot on, from the sound effects to the performances to everyone behind the scenes. And I tried to really think about what I think this film has that they never were really able to recapture, and I have to go with the story and the screenplay. So I had to hand it to George Lucas, Philip Kaufman, and Lawrence Kasdan for the incredible screenplay. Like I said, every scene in this film is a work of art in its own right. Everything is functional. Everything works. Everything has a flavor to it. And there is tension and energy at every stage of this film. Everything works, and I have to give it to the writers and say the story is at the end of the day. If I had to break everything down to what the essential component I think is, it's the story and the screenplay. So I had to give it to these three guys, and of course Steven Spielberg goes in there too. But I think that's a given at this point. So I really wanted to give it to the story and the screenplay.
No, dude, and a completely worthy. I was on the fence about the screenplay as well. It is the screenplay that should be taught in every film class around the world. It's just perfectly paced, excellently done. The right amount of exposition without going overboard. Explaining your character's motivation without overdoing it. And not just, nowadays there would have been a 10-minute soliloquy from Marion about what Indiana Jones did to her.
Or some side character explaining the story,
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Adrian and Marion. Yeah.
Even the scene where Brody shows up at Indiana Jones's house, again, that was another scene that I was looking at this time, and I said, again, this should be the most boring scene, the most expositionary scene, but I'm watching it and I'm saying to myself, first of all, I kind of never noticed before, but that whole scene is one shot. It's all one continuous shot. And again, they don't hype that, they don't make a big deal out of it, but just the fact that the whole thing happened without cuts was like, wow. I mean, that was tremendous. I mean, the camera work, the lighting in that scene is I remember a couple of times I noticed it, or somebody pointed out to me how well lit that scene is. But again, just that the way the dialogue flows, it's natural. It tells you what you need to know in a way that is easily digestible. In a way that, again, Indiana Jones is still that guy with he's even as you get to know him as the story goes on, he's got an air of mystery. I mean, just everything about it works. And I seriously, I gotta stop gushing before. Raiders, I should have bought you a drink first at least before.
Well, don't worry, Joe, because next week,
the
relationship's gonna get a little topply. Not too much. I don't think it's that much. I don't think it's as much as people at the time thought, but we're gonna get into that. Next week, we go over Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
This is where it's going to get interesting, because this is where the series really does kind of move forward in a way that I think, well, again, no spoilers, but I think it satisfies people in some way, disappoints in others, and it'll be interesting to see where you and I sit with the next few.
So until next week, my man.
My friend, good one. It was a pleasure to watch it and a pleasure to talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm very much looking forward to next week. I feel like next week is where things are going to get really interesting in this series.
Agreed. The roller coaster ride starts next week.
Both literal and figurative. So until next week, good night, ladies and gentlemen. Good night, my man.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Planet Giron is inhabited with Zypods like me, but also with Balmacs who are giant beasts. The Zypods and the Balmacs are at constant war, so we wanted a new home, and that's what Earth was for. But you are worthless, Alec Baldwin, you are worthless, Alec Baldwin. You fucked up my whole plan, and now Giron is smeared with Balmac pollen. Your garbage needs some hoeing, and you're worthless, Alec Baldwin. Now I must return home a failure. I'm afraid the pit of Cry Rock is calling.